Hello, everyone. We are back with another episode. I have a really interesting guest today. We have Iris with us. And I first came across Iris when I was using FocusMate, and it is one of the productivity apps that I use. So we got into the conversation of how she helps her clients get through how they can get a productivity system going with let's say with a lot of the tools that I use. So we read the same book, and I found that her experiences were interesting. So she agreed to this interview with us, and I'm really grateful. And if Iris, you could just introduce yourself, it would be great.
Yes, thank you so much for that kind introduction. I'm really glad we met during virtual co-working. That's a really fun way to get to know someone. I'm Iris Barzin, and I am a productivity coach and a soon-to-be psychologist. So I'm currently finishing up my degree in psychology to officially be a psychologist. And I have been a productivity coach for the last 8 years now, because it's 2021. And I mainly help my clients build custom sets of habits for productivity. So the idea is to figure out how to be productive in the long run without, the whole stress of beating yourself up, always feeling like you're not doing enough. So it's a lot about getting over procrastination, not having to use willpower as much every day, so it doesn't feel like such a struggle. And overall, the idea is to use psychology and some knowledge from psychology to just make getting things done easier and also more enjoyable, because there's no point in just being a productivity robot and then feeling awful even though you get everything done. So that's my main background. And I also work a lot with goal setting and helping clients set goals and then actually build the habit systems so that they can achieve them. So I'd say that's my background. And I'm German, by the way.
Awesome. I've been always curious about this the concept you have. I visited Iris's website. It is honestly beautiful. So right off the bat, she explains. So she has a statement. If you could repeat that, Iris, it would be great. Ambitious
Which
people.
statement? Sorry.
It is about ambitious people, overwhelmed ambitious people, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure exactly which one you're referring to, but it's probably something like, dear ambitious, overwhelmed people, you don't need willpower. You're already good.
So the moment I read it, I knew that this was it. Like I honestly, it stuck with me because I am the kind of guy who just wants to keep grinding, because I follow a lot of football, I follow a lot of basketball, so I follow Kobe Bryant. So he says that you miss all the shots you don't take. So I feel that I have to take up as many projects, as many work that I can. And then if that is your approach, then how do you not be overwhelmed? Like, how do you deal with these kinds of situations?
Okay. Yeah, well, basically all of my clients are ambitious people. So no matter how much they're currently getting done, even if they only get an hour of work done every day because they're knee-deep in procrastination, they all have ambitions. They all have big things they want to do with their lives or their careers. And yeah, so just because you are ambitious doesn't mean you can never procrastinate, right? Actually, I find that people who are very ambitious tend to procrastinate quite a lot because they have such high expectations for themselves and they want to get things done right, and they also want to get everything done. And that's not necessarily the best cocktail to feel good and get things done. It actually is almost a recipe for disaster, because it makes it so much easier for negative thoughts and procrastination to take hold. So when someone comes to me and says, okay, I have these 10 exciting projects, I am working this full-time job, I'm also having this side hustle that I want to build, and also I want to become fit, and a lot of things going on at the same time, what we try and do, first of all, is we try and figure out if those things are things they really want to do, or if they are should goals. So that's one step that can help prune down your projects and your to-do list, is just to check if those things that you have on your plate are truly things you're excited to do, or if they are things you feel like you should be doing. So for example, if you're trying to grow a business, the internet is full of advice of what you should be doing to be successful. And some of it is really good advice, but that doesn't mean you should take that on as a goal. For your business, something else might be, the better idea. So first of all, ask yourself, is this something I want to do? Or do I feel like I should be doing that because it's good or it's logical? It would just make sense to take on this goal. So if you do that, maybe there's one thing that you can already see that might, go to the back burner a little bit. But let's say you still had your side hustle, your full-time job as two big things, which are kind of contradicting each other because they all take the same resources, your time and your energy. And so for that, I think it's really important to start, well, first of all, to get clear on what exactly you expect yourself to do. And as much as you can within those two areas of your life, to try and prune it down so you can find some focus. So I'm not saying that you have to, stop all your different goal pursuits. You don't have to do that. You can still have plenty of things going on, but it's kind of an immense relief for the mind when you can find some focus. So let's say you were growing your business and you had some specific number that you wanted to reach with client work, let's say, because you're a freelance writer. Then, maybe you have 10 different things that you're doing at the same time to try and reach that goal. Then I'd ask you to see if, how many of those things are really doable for you, and how many of those things are already on autopilot. Maybe writing 3 articles a week is already no big deal for you. Great. But what about the other things that really need your attention and your energy? Is there a way that we can find the one thing that really is the thing that gets you excited right now and helps you, really feels like it contributes to your success? And that's kind of how we approach it. But I do want to say, it's really hard to find focus. It's very difficult because we have good arguments for every one of the projects that we want to do, right? So you don't have to figure this out in a 10-minute, reflection exercise. You can take your time and also try on different goals and projects and then decide as you go along.
Yeah. So I feel that goal setting is a crucial part of all of this. And as you were saying, that you have to prioritize and you have to see if that is worth doing or worth your time, right? So when you talk about goal setting, how do you approach it? So as it is New Year season, everybody's setting new goals. Everybody's excited about, like, New Year is like a birthday party for everybody. Everybody's celebrating. Everybody feels that they have a new beginning, and that is very positive and very negative at the same time, because it does not mean that you have some renewed energy every year. It just means that you have it. Maybe it's more psychological and people want to get started with something new. So how do you approach goal setting in your let's say I know how I know I want to, let's say I want to do a side hustle and I want to work on my full-time job. So to ends meet, I have to do these two things, right? So how do I prioritize when I'm stuck in this? So you say I don't have to give up my job. So how do I cut down on my side hustle, or how do I convince myself to go to sleep for at least 2 hours a day?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you that the new year and goal setting is an exciting time and also a bit of a dangerous time. Because we can make our year really hard for ourselves if we set really high expectations of all the amazing things we're going to achieve, and then we don't most of the time, and then we just feel like we're terrible people. So that is what I would want to avoid with goal setting. And that was why I got interested in, goal setting science and the psychology, the research behind it, because I thought, how come that, the majority of goal pursuits are never achieved? So what are we doing? And then also, why are we torturing ourselves so much? And I wanted to figure out if there were certain best practices that scientists had found that could help with that. And so first of all, I'd say, well, I have a whole process for goal setting, and I've actually created a course on that, which is free at the moment. So we can talk about that later. But I'd say when I set a goal, I think about the year to come, and I'm very aware that I can't set 5 goals. It's just not realistic. So I like to kind of differentiate between, my 1 or 2 real goals, and then play goals that I have on the side. So for example, I might have goals, for my business, and maybe I also have a big personal goal to write more this year or to work out regularly this year, something that is slightly different from my work area in my life. So if you want to set 1 or 2 big goals for the year, I'd say try to make them very different from each other. So a career and a health goal works well, but a career day job goal and a career side hustle goal is usually a bit tricky to achieve because they literally take all the same energy from you. For most people, their day job requires them to concentrate and have a lot of attention, and their night side hustle also requires them to sit in front of a laptop and have a lot of concentration. And that's just going to be hard because every time you sit down to work on work or you sit down to work on your side hustle, those things are in direct competition with each other. But if you set a goal that is career related and a health related goal, they still require time, but they feel different, right? A physical goal needs maybe endurance, physical energy for me. It also still needs some willpower and convincing, but probably different than your day job and the sitting down to concentrate type work. So I'd say, there is research behind the fact that the more dissimilar, the more different 2 goals are, the easier it is for our brain to keep both and understand that it can work on both. The closer they are to each other, the more they basically fight each other. So we want to avoid that. But let's say you have your 1 or 2 big goals for the year, which can still be a struggle to just have those. What I like to do on the side is to have a bunch of play goals or play areas in my life. So for example, while I'm pursuing certain business and career goals, I also have random fun goals like, I don't know, getting better at taking care of my plants or learning French or going to a dance class. Those types of things that I'm not as serious about and committed to. They feel more like free time and like fun and play for me. And that way they don't require as much energy from me because they don't have the seriousness and the rigidity that goals that we kind of officially set can have for us. So I've said a lot there, so I'm going to stop now and check in with you.
I think it's very interesting. So I've been reading this Essentialism book by Peter McQueen, and he talks about how important playtime is for your brain, for you to relax, for you to be more creative, be more active in your day job, and perform better. So, how would you how would you put aside time for you to play? Because I always I to be honest, I do not go out with my friends just for meeting them, or I avoid times when I feel that I will be wasting time because I'm working on 2 different major projects, and I feel guilty when I go out and enjoy myself because I don't know, it does not feel right with me. But eventually the time comes when there is a breakdown, and I eventually end up going to some party, and I feel better then. But the next day is worse. I feel that I wasted the last day, and it's I don't know. How do you let yourself take the moment and just enjoy for a not just invest everything in the future, but enjoy the present for a while? So how do you make that mental shift?
Yeah, that's a big one, and a difficult one. You're definitely not the only ambitious person struggling with this. Yeah, a lot of my clients have this thing as well. Some are at the stage where they say, okay, rest is productive, so I'm going to let myself have rest. But I also sometimes work with people who literally want to structure every minute of their day to be optimized and great. And that is a good, or I understand the intention behind that, but it doesn't work long term. It just doesn't. There always comes the point where people burn out, either because they've just done too much and not rested enough, and also not just let their minds be okay with spending time however they spend it, which is important. But there also comes a breakdown at some point, because something in your life always comes up. It could be a pandemic, it could be a divorce, it could be a health issue, it could just be a bad week for whatever reason, and then you're thrown, and maybe you're not able to perform at the same level that you were able to just grind through for months on end, because you had a breather for a moment, and then your body just goes, oh no, we're not doing that again. So, you know, if you need reasons to convince your mind that rest is productive, just avoiding these burnout, depression, or whatever it is for you cycles, that alone saves you a lot of time. If you don't have to spend, you know, a week in bed watching Netflix because you feel like you just literally can't do anything anymore. You know, you might just as well have had some nice, enjoyable, real quality time with yourself or with others beforehand. And this whole idea of, you know, my whole philosophy about productivity is that you don't just need rest. You need rest, but you don't just need it to be productive. It's also just kind of a human right to be able to enjoy your life. And trust me, there is no point in your life where you go, I've succeeded at this big project and now I can relax. It's not, you know, this whole relaxing thing is like a muscle that you need to train as well. You can always find a new goal to focus on. You can always, there is no there in the journey where you stop. Once I get there, I will let myself do X. It doesn't happen. When you get there, you will do something else. Or even if you let yourself relax, you'll probably have a really hard time relaxing because you're not used to it. So I think of taking care of yourself as essential and as a muscle, something that, you know, when I have a client, we also start to figure out what me time looks like for them, self-care looks like for them. And we also develop this whole mindset of kind of just accepting what is. I mean, I was the same way as you. Like when I started my business, I just felt like I have to work all the time. I worked weekends. I wasn't super productive, but I worked a lot. And over time, as you practice this whole thing and really get that rest is important, I have no issue watching a bunch of Netflix, or I don't know, doing something stupid with my time where I can absolutely not say that it was worth anything much, because that's part of being human. It's just part of, you know, how we spend our time on Earth, and I think that's great. And you don't need to, you know, want to spend hours watching Netflix like I sometimes do, but, you know, just allow yourself to have some quality me time, and also allow yourself to have some trashy me time, and be okay with it. And I do think by doing that more, you might find it easier to accept that that's okay.
So I absolutely agree with that. And so always, at least, I don't know how it has been for you, but for me, right in the Indian education system, there is a compulsive urge of being the best. If you're doing, let's say, if you're in 8th grade, you want to be at the top. Everybody expects you to be the first in the class, irrespective of what subject it is or what subject you like. And I think that has taken a very bad toll on a lot of youth, at least in my friend group, which makes you feel that you're always in competition. You cannot just rest. You cannot just stop and think, because you're thinking that, okay, he's working harder. He'll get better marks than me because I'm not studying right now. And then you feel guilty about why this is happening. Like you feel guilty about just waiting. You feel that you're wasting so much time, and I think that is very bad. And So that is why I've been thinking about how do I unlearn that and learn something new. And then I realized that there are two things: comparing yourself and there's competition. So I don't think I hate competition, but I think I hate comparison. So comparison is basically when you just take a whole person and then compare. Okay, he's good at that and I'm bad at that, so I am a worse person than him. I try to like take the act out. So let's say that I'm playing a tennis match, and then I just try to compare my tennis skills to his tennis skills, and the better person wins. That is all. So it's not about a person being bad or worse. So that has been a huge mental barrier for me to get across. And yeah, maybe that these are the reasons that I feel I have a hard time relaxing. And so in the book he explains that you have to say no to 90% of things. So there's a concept called hell yes or no. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
So I I feel that it goes against everything, I think, because I feel that the more you do, the better it is, the more experience you get, so that you can do next projects better or something like that. But what he suggests is you have to say no to 90% of the things and just say yes to the 10%. So I always wonder about what is these people who write these books are extremely successful, right? They do not have problems, like they do not have let's say problems with finding projects. They just get projects because they have already reached that pinnacle, and they have option of selection is what I feel. But for a person who is starting off, he or she does not have so many options, right? So how do you like have the courage to say no in those situations? Or do you agree with the hell yes or no? And if yes, then how could you, like, how do you make yourself do that?
Okay. Yeah, good question. So you've touched on a lot of different things. You talked about comparison, competition, pressure to succeed, and the question of, can you say no to things even when you're starting out, and how do you deal with that? So okay, so for the whole comparison and competition aspect, I think most cultures have this thing where you are compared. There's high expectations of you, but I think in India it might be especially brutal because I've had some Indian clients who were students and who felt the pressure a lot. And here's one thing I learned. I work with a lot of CEOs, CTOs, entrepreneurs who made it. So I both work with students who are just starting out, and I work with people who have achieved some objective success, let's say. And what I find is that the people who look amazing from the outside, the CEOs, the successful people, they're still humans and they still struggle with things. So they still struggle with things like procrastination. They still struggle or feel like they're not doing enough and have time management things. They also have insecurities and self-doubt. They compare themselves to others. I have one client who has a digital agency that he built up from the ground that makes more than $1 million every year. And now he feels like that's not very much, because he could also have built something way bigger, because some of his successful friends have built things that are way bigger. And so all those psychological things like comparison, self-doubt, they apply to anyone and everyone. It's just that we just don't see it. And I mean, I can tell you two versions of how I got to where I am today, which is that I have worked on this business for 8 years while I was a student, and I made it a success to my own, definition, because I can live off of it. That was what I wanted to achieve. And I'm doing something that I love. So that was what I wanted. That was my big goal for my 20s. And I can tell you the parts of the story that are, oh, and then I did this strategic thing and that got me clients, and then I did this great internship and that helped me understand I didn't want to be a therapist, or whatever part of the story that looks good. You can always tell a version of your story that sounds like you were just the most smart, incredible person on earth, and you wouldn't be lying because those things actually happened. But you can also share the parts of the story when you were terrified, when you felt like an absolute idiot, when you had an awful year because you just felt like nothing made any sense. And that would also be true. So that is something that I always keep in mind, kind of whenever people come to me and say, I'm only doing this much studying, or I'm only doing this much work every day. I feel like I'm the only idiot who doesn't figure out how to work more. I've worked with enough people to know that the other people also often don't, like they're probably at a similar level. You're just not talking about it. So that's one thing that I find helpful whenever I go into a comparison trap. And then you also ask questions about, okay, if I have ambition and I want to build something up, how can I do that when I don't have opportunities thrown at me? And I feel like I just need to do more because otherwise I don't even stand a chance. So for that, I'd say the hell yes or no strategy is actually a really good one. And I've used this a lot in my business and in building my career, because the same thing is true for you and I as for the people who are $1 million CEOs. They only have 24 hours in a day. And I always think about, when I plan out my goals for the next few years, I always have kind of a bunch of different versions of how maybe I'd like my life to go, like a bunch of different career directions I'm interested in, a bunch of, different places I could live. I like to keep those in mind and think about those and just explore what I like. But then I'm also very aware that I cannot live all those versions of my life, right? I cannot move to Amsterdam and, for example, become a copywriter on top of coaching, and also live in Stockholm and be a couples therapist. Like, those are just some of the things I find interesting. It's just literally not possible. Or if it was, probably only when I'm 40 or 50 and have had a lot of time to get the other things in my life on autopilot, so that I feel like I can take on another thing. And so I've heard really good advice from Jonathan Fields, the creator of the Good Life Project. He has a video on YouTube that is about how should you spend your 20s to be successful. And I think this applies to anyone who is in a transition phase. And he basically says, run a bunch of experiments and try a lot of different things to find the things you want to spend 10 years in to get successful. And I found that to be a very encouraging message, because it didn't say find one thing, spend your 10,000 hours of practice on that one thing, and if you choose the wrong thing, sad for you. And so this is what I always like to do with the hell yes thing. I like to ask myself, okay, is this an experiment, an experimental job, or an experimental project that is a hell yes for me? Because if it isn't, then I'm going in an okay direction, but I'm saying no to something else that I might absolutely love to spend my time on. And this applies whether people throw opportunities at you or not. And having this level of clarity about what a hell yes is for you, and you get better and better over the years with that, the more that you know yourself, the easier it is to say no to things, because you'll know what how you like to spend your time. So I definitely would subscribe to that hell yes methodology.
Yeah, when you put it that way, I understand. So how much how do you rate, so let's say I have 10 projects on my table right now. Okay, I am 50% interested in all of them. So I am not 100% in it, but I'm not 100% out of it. I just want to see if that works, and all are simultaneously, the time span that they have are shared. So if I say yes to one thing, I have to say no to the next 5 things. So how do you make a wise choice? And if you made a bad choice, So how do you have less repercussions in the future is my question, because I find myself in these situations always, that I have to make a decision, and more often than not I choose something and it turns out, at least I feel in my head that I should have taken that. After I'm done with this, I feel that I should have taken that, because I would have gone further with that project than I went with this one. So I don't know if that is regret exactly, but uh, how do you deal with this? How do you, like, do you have a system? Because we have read Atomic Habits, and I try to put up systems for this to just break this, because it bugs me a lot whenever these situations come across. I come across these situations. So how do you have a system, or do you do that in the uh, in the in the times that you're helping others?
Yeah. Okay. So I hear you. That's tricky, right? You have a lot of things that could potentially be an amazing idea, and they're almost equal, so you don't know what to choose. So whenever I will regularly go through cycles, it's getting better over the years, but I have a tendency to do something similar, which is that I will start to take on commitments because they sound exciting. And then one day I'll wake up and be completely overwhelmed and stressed out. And so what I do then is I literally take a piece of paper, I write down all the projects, and I guess I just look at them and do a gut check about which ones of these do I actually love? Like, how do I really feel about them? Which one of these I do because I think I can't not do them? And which ones are mission critical, I can't get out of them. So for example, for me, that has always been my degree. I just need to do the things that need to be done, even if certain projects aren't great. So by putting both the things that are blocked commitments that I can't get out of or absolutely don't want to face the consequences of getting out of, for you that might be your day job work. For now, that's not something that you can probably negotiate on if you want to keep the salary for now. Then I would put that in there and just try my best to be realistic about how much time that takes. So for example, let's say you work 8 hours a day and you have a 1 hour lunch break. So that's 9 hours of your day that are already gone. Probably also 9 of your more awake hours of the day. Then with all the other projects that you have, I would try and ask myself questions like, if I could only choose one more thing, which would I choose? And I know it's an annoying and a cliche question, but it can really help. And then I try my best to get clear on fake senses of urgency that I have, where I feel like, oh, this absolutely needs to be done now. If I don't do this now, I will never do this in my life. I try to be very real about if this is urgent because it feels urgent to me, or if there's a real deadline out there in the world, like, you can only apply to this thing now because it's a job offer. And to do that as well, you can do an Eisenhower matrix, which is just this simple grid with 4 fields that ranks things according to urgency and importance. And so you have urgent and important projects, non-urgent important projects, etc. And usually what I find when I do a matrix like that is that I want to put everything in the urgent and important matrix. Almost everything lands in that one. And so then I try to say, okay, which one of these are they all really important, or do I just feel like I suddenly need to upgrade my whole social media presence for my business because, I don't know, I saw one talk that suggested I do that. Is that really important, and is that really urgent, or does it just feel urgent? And then I try to sort things into the other categories. If something falls into the not urgent, not important part, and it's not something that I absolutely have to do, like getting back to my health insurance or something, then I'll try my best to scrap that, or delegate it if there is a way to delegate it to someone else. And the whole idea of the Eisenhower matrix is that, you try your best to spend quite a bunch of time in the non-urgent, important part of your project, because there are certain projects that will never become urgent, or at least not for a long time. Working on your side hustle is probably one of those things. It feels urgent, but there isn't no one is sitting next to you screaming into your ear that you need to get it done now, and you might just as well not get it done.
Yeah.
So you really need to carve out time for it. So I try to spend some time up in there, and then a lot of my other time in the urgent and important projects. But just having this matrix can really help figure out if it's just a felt urgency or a real life urgency. And 90% of the time, I find it's just a felt urgency, and then I can deal with that.
That's really interesting. I've heard about the matrix that you're talking about, and I've never used it personally, but I think I should start doing that. It's about time. So I've so there's a idea that I subscribe to, that is, you are a sum total of 5 people you're around, right?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, how do you eliminate toxic people from your friend circle? Because it's so, I think emotions don't have any logic. You cannot add emotions. Like if you have a friend that is that the friendship lasts for around you have been friends with him from first grade or something like that, you cannot just say, yeah, you're not productive, you're not you don't have the same goals that I do, so I'm not going to talk to you forever now, just be deleted from my life. It's very hard to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with these situations? Because like we talk about all these concepts that are possible but are very hard to implement. So I have read a ton of books about how to use my life, use my time properly, but these are the practical problems that you face when somebody asks you to come out with you, but it is not possible for you then to you say yes, because you don't want to go, but it is about the history that you have with that person and you don't want to hurt them. You're not doing something wrong, but you are doing something that is against your best wishes. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with people essentially?
Okay. All right. Well, that whole saying of you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, there is some wisdom to that. I mean, I spent more time with creative people now that I live in Salzburg, just because, my boyfriend is a designer and a lot of his friends are, creatives of some kind. And that's great. And that makes me consider, it makes me consider doing more creative projects myself, which is great. So there is definitely something to be said about the influence of other people on you. If I was around people partied 24/7, which I don't particularly enjoy, then I probably would start to feel weird, because why don't I want to do that? And they all want to do that. So yes, other people influence us. But I also really do not like this quote, because it makes it sound like who you spend your time with is just another thing that needs to be optimized. And I'm a coach. I literally do help people change something in their life, and I guess optimize their lives. So I get the irony, but at the same time, I don't think that this approach of, evaluate your friends on a pro and cons list and optimize for only the ones who you think have the potential to be successful and interesting, I don't think that's necessarily the best approach. So actually, I think that's a terrible approach. So you talked about, I think, different types of people here. You talked about toxic people, then you talked about people who maybe you've just kind of outgrown the relationship, and then you've also talked about not hurting people's feelings and still doing what's right for you. So for, first of all, I would be careful with the word toxic people, because just because someone isn't, let's say, ambitious and wants to be self-employed, and maybe that's the number one thing in your life right now, doesn't necessarily make them toxic if they enjoy other things in their life that don't have to do with ambition, right? That's not a toxic friend. Toxic friend or a toxic person is someone who is verbally abusive toward you, who says things that make you feel bad about yourself, or who hurts you in some way, or otherwise just messes with your mental health. I would say that's a toxic person. For those people, it can be really tricky to get them out of your life, because, they're usually great manipulators and great at emotionally threatening you with weird side comments. So for that, I would recommend looking up all the advice on how to get out of emotionally abusive relationships, because that's a big thing. But for just, let's say, people who you used to be friends with and you don't necessarily want to be friends with anymore, I would do two things. One, when I have a friend, oftentimes a newish friend, and I realize, oh, maybe we're not the best fit. Maybe we're too different when I thought I really liked you, but I guess I don't. Then I just literally stop being the super proactive person in the relationship. I will stop, suggesting things. I will just let it die down quietly, if you will, without having a breakup conversation, because we probably haven't been friends in that way anyways. And for that, I just say, don't do anything that goes against your own interest in a very obvious way. Don't commit to a vacation with them. You really don't want to go on a vacation with them. Ask yourself these questions regularly. Am I doing something that I already know I don't want to do? And try, even with the baby steps of, meeting them somewhere, maybe push that back a little, or, just don't do it if you can. But there's also other friends who you might not feel like you want to be friends with them anymore right now, but you have a long history with them, where things might change and you might very much love having them in your life again in 5 years. So after I got out of high school, which happens when you're 19 in Germany, after I got out of high school, I, went into college and I started a business, and my mind was full of optimization and everything like that. And I had one friend who started to take a very traditional life path that was more about security, and I could not understand it. It really made me mad. I felt that everyone needed to, be into personal development and everything, and we just didn't have that much to connect about anymore, because it turned out a lot of our friendship was based on being in school together all the time, and also having a lot of things, the same issues and the same stuff to talk about. And when we were basically long distance, because we went to college in different places, it all just felt weird. And for a while, I was also pretty bothered by this the 5 people you spent the most time with thing. And I was like, oh, maybe we're not a good fit anymore. And then now I'm really glad that we remained friends. We didn't meet each other all the time. We maybe didn't have the longest phone calls, and maybe there were certain topics that we just didn't talk about because we didn't get it for each other. Yeah. But over time, we preserved the friendship, and now, 10 years later, we have things in common, and she's a very, very precious friend to me, and a super important person in my life. And I'm really glad that, I guess in German we say, we let each other live. That means despite your differences, you just leave each other alone and are happy for them, and took the friendship into the next cycle of the friendship. So I do think about friendships as having seasons, and sometimes I have a year where I'm really close with my best friend that I've been friends with forever, and sometimes I have years where we don't really know what to talk about as much, and then it changes again. So I guess, to sum all of this up, if they are toxic people, literally research how to get out of toxic relationships. What applies to romantic relationships also applies to other relationships. If they are just people that you want to spend less time with, do your best to not say yes to things that you already know you want to say no to. So decrease contact slowly but surely, and stop being the proactive friend. And if they are friends that you are kind of falling out of love with, but you have a history with them and you did value them a lot, they were really close, give them another chance maybe, and just change how frequently you interact, or find something else that you can connect with about, if that's sport or something else that you can share. And don't do a big drama breakup thing that you might regret later, as you yourself become a different person again.
Yeah, I agree with this so much. I resonate with it too. So I always think that despite your differences, you should be able to be in a room with them, with anybody, because that is what society is, right? At the end of the day, that is what we as humans are here to do. Like, we are here to stay with each other. And one more thing that I think is, if you let somebody bother you without even noticing them. So I had this friend in school that I hated him like from day one. But after we passed out from school, like from high school, we stopped meeting because circles became different, and we stopped meeting. And then too, I did not like get him out of my head. Like anytime he used to message on a friends group, I used to get irritated. So a couple of years ago, I realized that he's living in my head rent free. So it really stuck me that he does not even know I exist. Why am I irritated? Why am I giving him so much energy that I can use to be productive? So yeah, I really agree with what you said. And I think a lot of people have to understand that living in society has to be living with people you actually hate, and like, you have to be able to accept them who they are. And yeah, you don't have to spend the whole life with them, but you just have to accept them as they are and be just be, I guess.
Yeah, I hear you. And I think for, you know, friendships that are no longer friendships, there's the ones that you just described right now, the ones where you're just like, why does this person have a space in my life? Clearly I can just cut them out and not have their judgment in my mind anymore. Because, you know, that's another thing, the quote unquote negative voices in our head that tell us that we can't do something, oftentimes that's what other people used to tell us. Or maybe we have a very specific person that we think about when we hear that you can't make it as an online business owner, voices, for example. But yeah, for those, it's this whole thing of, you can't live rent free in my mind. Let's try to dispute these voices. Literally, you can talk to them in your head and just go, you have no room here, and I'm gonna kick you out now. But there's also the other friendships where maybe you were disappointed because you thought that you were close friends, and then maybe one of you moves or something happens and they just almost like reduce contact with you 100%. And that might be because they're literally doing the same thing that you're doing to some other people to get them out of their lives, because, you know, maybe they don't see you as a fit in their life. But I've found that with those people, that used to bother me a lot, because I would say I'm a pretty good friend and I'm very loyal, and Germans tend to be very loyal in friendships anyways. Usually have a lot of lifelong friendships. And so that bothered me because I couldn't understand why it didn't work anymore, why they wouldn't message back once I had moved, for example. But over time, I understood that, you know, sometimes, you know, that will just happen. You will lose people along the way. And for the people that you want to keep with you when you move away, or something happens that changes your friendship dynamic completely, or you have to go long distance, you know, be the proactive friend. If you want to have them in your life, be proactive and suggest the Skype dates and stuff. But also, if those people don't, you know, reciprocate that or stop, you know, messaging you, take that for that what that is, and don't take it personally. And then, I mean, that is something that I think serves one really well, when you can just, you know, sometimes, you know, it's always two people, just like in a romantic relationship, two people who need to make it work. And when someone else just starts acting really weird around you, then maybe just slowly let them go and accept that that doesn't have to mean that you don't have to hate yourself forever because you weren't good enough for them. That really isn't how it works.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I think coaches like you have to exist in this world, because the human aspect that you provide and you understand is immense, honestly immense. Because it is impossible for a few people. I at least can express what I'm thinking. I have come across people who cannot even do that, and I feel so bad for them that they need help desperately, but they cannot even express that. And like coaches like you who have a human touch, I think I think we honestly need more people like you. So how can people get in touch with you, and how can people like what is exactly the business you're doing and how can people subscribe to you basically?
Okay, cool. Thank you for your kind words. They're just really nice. Thank you. Um, so so I'm a productivity coach, and everything about my work you can find at irisbarzen.com. So that's Iris and then BARZEN.com. I always have to, I'm bad at spelling in English, so I always have to make sure I get it right. But it's basically myname.com. So you can find my coaching services there. You can also read articles there about many of the things that we've talked about today. And then also just a lot of articles about productivity, kind productivity is what I like to call it, a way to be productive and still feel good and not beat yourself up. That's the goal. We want it to be easy to implement these habits, and we want them to be enjoyable. So all of that you can find there. I also have spent last year developing a goal setting course. So how we talked about earlier on this call, what's the signs of effective goal setting? What are some factors that can help people set goals that are realistic, that they can kind of trust? And what can they do to come up with an action plan that is actually doable? And again, doesn't rely on willpower so much, but uses the power of habits and kind of automating good behavior, the things that help you make progress. So that will be live in January. I don't have a specific date yet, but in January 2021, you can go to irisbarzen.com/goals and you will be redirected to that course. It's a free course because it's part of my research project for my master's thesis. So, as of right now, you can literally go there, sign up to be on the wait list, and then you can take the course, and that takes you through, an entire goal setting process to set a 1-year goal, short-term goal, and develop kind of, I guess, a custom system of habits to help you, actually work on that goal. And it's part my personal experience of coaching people and helping them, and part science of what I found reading a ton of papers. So if people want to check that out, I'd love to have them because I need hundreds of people to do my stats with anonymously. So you can go to irisbarzen.com/goals for that. And yeah, I'm also on social media, but I don't really post. So I would recommend my website instead.
Awesome. So I will have all the links in the description so that it is easier for people to sign up. It was really awesome talking to you. I hope we do this again. And I'll see you around. Thank you. Thank you for listening.